Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our MGA Next Gen session alongside Mental Health and Business. It's a pleasure to welcome you, and I know many of you will have come across me before. I'm Manveen. I'm the Learning and Insights Manager here at the MGA. You'll probably be familiar with some of our housekeeping points if you've come along to any of our webinars, and it's always good just to run through these because I do just want to highlight that you might not have access to your camera and mic at the moment. Please be rest assured this is intentional just to ensure that we've got the full bandwidth to our host Steve today, so please don't worry, we will enable these during any Q&A sessions at the end, so you will have the opportunity to speak with us, but you can use the chat to engage with us. We do also ask that you don't use any AI note-taking tools, so we don't have permission of everyone attending to use these. And back to the topic of questions, we do encourage and welcome these, of course, throughout the session. You have the option of the chat or the Q&A. Please feel free to use the chat as we will be monitoring this throughout the session. And Steve and I will pick these up, but there'll also be an opportunity for Q&A at the end if you prefer to wait. Additional resources or anything mentioned in this session will be shared post-session, so please don't worry if you miss something at the time. And we're also recording this session, so it'll be made available post the event together with a link to our feedback survey if you want to access it at another time or revisit any of the tips and micro habits that Steve's going to share with us today. And if you do find this supports your learning, you can utilise it on your CPD log. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce and hand over today's MGA Next Gen and Mental Health and Business session to Steve, who's going to get our session underway today. Thank you all.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Manveen. It's really, really good to be here. Always good to start with an introduction. You heard Manveen there say mental health in business. That's our organisation, my organisation. I'm co-founder of Mental Health in Business, and we help businesses of all shapes and sizes navigate this landscape of workplace mental health, workplace well-being, and we help businesses ultimately build meaningful, impactful well-being programs, focus on supporting everybody in the business. So a little introduction into the work that we do, and then just a little bit more about me. One of the, there's a number of reasons why I do the work that I do in this space of workplace mental health, and it's simply because of my passion for the topic. And so what we say in this well-being space is when anybody has personal lived experience, that's ultimately what we say. And I certainly have lived experience of poor mental health, mental illness. And so even from, I'm going all the way back to teenage years, anxiety was a big thing for me. And then later on in life, depression. And so those things have kind of been the backdrop, really. And it was my birthday the other day, and I'm 46 years of age now. And so I've had a lifetime of living through, coping, trying to figure all of this out. And that's ultimately, in one way, how I ended up doing this work, because of my experience, lived experience, and my passion to help and support other human beings. And so here we are. The topic for today is, hopefully you can see the slides, I'm sure you can. From awareness to action. Micro habits that protect mental health at work, and then in brackets, the focus is for us as individuals, for those around us in the workplace, and then for all of us, so the wider organisation view. And I've just got to say that the theme is very closely linked. So the topic for this session today is closely linked, of course, to Mental Health Awareness Week. That is next week. So we're kind of ahead of the curve, really, with this one. And that's from the 11th to the 17th of May. And it focuses on action. Because, let's face it, it's a good thing that all of this awareness raising has been happening over the years. There's a lot of great work been done in this space. Long may it continue. But it's not just about awareness. It's about action. And we are, when we sort of looked at the topic of Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's about action, one of the things that we thought of as a team, and particularly with the focus on this webinar, is wouldn't it be good to explore the world of what we call micro habits? And so that's one of the things that we're going to do shortly. But first, and very quickly and swiftly, my details are there on the slide. You've got various details there, including my email. Sometimes these sessions, they can kind of bring stuff up for people. And I always put my details there just in case someone wanted to email me and share anything. And to be honest, a big part of the work that I do is supporting people on a one-to-one basis, as well as all the other things that I do. Because, of course, I'm a trainer, public speaker, and again, I support people on a one-to-one basis. So my details there. You can also see I'm a mental health first aid instructor as well. Okay, so we've got some objectives here. Now, I'm not going to read this word for word. It just gives us a sense of what this is all about. And so by the end of this session, we're going to be looking at these small actions that we can take to meaningfully improve hope, agency, so a sense of control over our lives, our wellness, our mental well-being, and we can build resilience. We're going to be using something called action mapping, just a simple method, to be honest, to convert common workplace stresses into simple, repeatable micro habits, small actions that we can take day to day to make these improvements. So we are going to be getting practical, and I think that's very important. It's not just about me speaking. By the way, if you've got a pen or a piece of paper, if you like to make notes like that, would be a good idea. Also, I'm going to be asking here and there some questions, and I'm going to be getting your answers in the chat, so watch out for that. The last few objectives there, we're looking at tools to support others around us. So it is about a perspective on us as individuals, but it's those around us as well. So work colleagues, those who we work shoulder to shoulder with. And also it's about a wider organizational approach as well. So it's kind of like individual first, and then we zoom up, zoom out to the collective. And that's very much in the spirit of this action taking when it comes to Mental Health Awareness Week next week. So I hope you're all well, and I hope you feel like you're in the right room. I can see there are 23 of us here on the session, which is great stuff. It's great to be here. And now's one of those times when I am going to ask a question. Just focus on the first thing first. One thing that drains your energy at work right now is, let's have some answers in the chat just to the first question there. Have a little think about this. Are there things that tend to drain your energy at work right now? Answers in the chat. Let's get some answers in the chat. One thing that drains your energy at work right now. Could it be being interrupted? Could it be looking at a computer every single minute of the day? I mean, that's the nature of our work, so hopefully not. Let's have a look at some of these answers then. So someone shared a lack of clarity on what's expected from you. Absolutely, that can be a real big stressor. Lots of emails, loads of emails, spreadsheets with an exclamation mark, politics as well. Absolutely. That could be, who knows, it could be internal politics. It could be politics out there. Too many unnecessary meetings, repetitive manual tasks, urgent requests, everything. Yeah, it's almost like we live in a time where everything's urgent. And there's lots of thumbs up as well, so lots of agreement when it comes to people's suggestions there. So what about the next thing then? Well, what's one thing that gives you energy at work right now? So that's the opposite. What is it that gives you energy at work right now? Let's see what answers arrive in the chat. So the sunshine, absolutely, that makes a difference. A sense of achievement, absolutely. Learning anything new, a big smiley face alongside the comment, my team, which is really powerful and positive. Great colleagues, great people, being able to complete a larger task, absolutely. Fresh air during breaks, we're going to be talking about that as we get into this session. Praise from others, super important. Really, really important. Lots of important topics in the chat there. Ticking things off to-do list. We are very much in line, Victoria, as far as to-do lists. Lots of thumbs up and in agreement as well. It's interesting because, you know, this gives us the two sides of the coin, really, and it really is important as well to focus in on what we might call the negatives, you know, what is taking or draining energy away, but what are the positives as well? What are those things that give us the sense of energy or purpose or satisfaction within work? And I think it can be really helpful for us to be aware of those, because sometimes it can feel like the negatives completely outweigh the positives. It's quite natural for that to happen, actually. I think they call it survival bias. Okay, well, great stuff. That gets the chat fired up. There's going to be a little bit more of that as we go through the session today. Now, I mentioned this language that I've been using, micro habits, these small actions that we can take, and we're going to be pretty much starting there. We've seen some of them already on the chat. I'm talking about taking short breaks. It could be even really short breaks, micro breaks, you might call those, in between tasks. We're talking about getting up and moving. You know, many of us in this profession, and certainly in my profession, if I'm not standing up delivering training, I am sitting down looking at a computer. Information-based work, a lot of us do, certainly when we sit in front of computers. So it is important that we get up and move. And I know that we know this. I know that we know these things, but it's about transferring knowing into doing, which is what this session is all about. So getting up, moving, stretching, going for a short walk, all of that, that's what I'm talking about. Well, why are these things a good idea? That's not an exhaustive list, by the way. Let's just have a quick look at what some of the research says. Around 1 in 6 workers in the UK report experiencing a common mental health problem. We're talking about anxiety and depression in this specific example at any one time. That is from the Office of National Statistics, if I can say that phrase, and NHS Digital as well. It sort of sets the scene, doesn't it? It shows the prevalence of these things that we call anxiety and depression, which I will add are the more common mental health diagnoses or challenges that people face. We're more likely to come across these conditions, let's say, in the workplace than any of the other conditions that you may have heard of when it comes to mental health. So it does set the scene, and it acknowledges ultimately where we are when it comes to the mental health landscape. A few more stats here. We've got 17 million working days are lost annually due to work-related stress, depression, or anxiety. It is per year. Yes, great. Good question there in the chat. Thank you very much. The HSE, Health and Safety Executive, identifies demands, control, support, relationships, role, and change as key drivers of work-related stress. Now, when it comes to work-related stress, and anybody who is interested in this particular topic, it could be you're interested as an individual or you are interested as a leader, I would suggest absolutely to go and search for and look at and start to figure out ways to implement the HSE management standards. They make a difference when it comes to workplace stress. That is what they are there for. Finally, behavioral activation research, and this is widely used in a therapy known as CBT. That's cognitive behavior therapy, really good for anxiety. So behavioral activation research, widely used in CBT and NHS talking therapies, shows that small structured actions can improve mood, improve brain functioning, even when our motivation is low. So that all kind of points to it's a good idea that we're here looking into this, listening in, and hopefully taking some notes, because we're going to start talking about these small actions, aka micro actions. You can also call these micro breaks. Interesting that the science and the research backs this up. But first, just an acknowledgement. I mean, most of us know what's good for us. Many of us do. I think we all do. Perhaps you've been on lots of these sort of webinars before, and we can see these things that we know: getting good sleep, moving more, eating well, taking breaks, talking to people. It's about connection, and it's also about setting boundaries. That's a really important one, actually. If setting boundaries are difficult for you, very, very important for mental health. Absolutely. And of course, all of those are, and I know what you're thinking, and I know I've already hinted at this, we know a lot of this. But how come then, how come knowing doesn't always equal doing? I mean, we're all human beings. I think fallible's the word. Hopefully that's the right word to use, but I think you get the sense of what I'm talking about. A little bit about why we might struggle with these. Yes, we know them. Some interesting stuff. There can be this thing called cognitive overload. So this is, you could say, a little bit from a neuroscience perspective. And so we all have a tendency as human beings, when under stress, when there is that perceived level of threat or perceived level of stress, or our body could be telling us, indicating, we know what it feels like when we feel stress. Our default is we do what's easiest. We do what's easiest. And so those well-worn paths in our brain are ultimately our habits. Habits become unconscious. And so we tend to reach for the things that we usually do and not create these new habits, which is ultimately what we're going to be talking about. Cognitive overload can get in the way. Something else called all or nothing thinking. This can be linked to wanting to do something perfectly first time. Some of you may relate to this. It is, I nearly called it a cognitive distortion then. I think it's probably more accurately a cognitive bias, of which there are many. And again, we're all human beings. We all have these cognitive bias. But just look out for these when it comes to trying to build new habits. And then the final one here, habits drive behavior. And so this is what I'm talking about. A lot of our habits, the habits that we have, we learn them at some point in our life, and then they kind of sink into unconscious awareness. And depending on what research you look at, apparently a lot of these habits that we have run the show. It could be behavioral things that actions that we take. It could be the way that we think as well. So all of these we consider when it comes to, well, what gets in the way of creating new habits? Because remember, we're just about to explore what we mean by these micro habits, these short pauses, cognitive resets this is where we're going to go with this session. So look, instead of going for perfection, I think it's more helpful to ask, well, what's a small useful action I could take right now? What's a small useful action that I could repeat? It's a really helpful thing when it comes to building these habits to think in that way. Because we're talking about small, consistent behaviors, and we're starting to shift from knowledge into action now. It doesn't have to be these huge Hollywood moments. We're talking about small actions one can take. We saw in that research when it comes to the cognitive behaviors therapy side of things, that small consistent actions or small consistent behaviors can create positive ripples, improve wellness, increase this sense of control perhaps we have over our day-to-day, improve mood, and build resilience over time. So remember, I'm talking about short breaks. It could be a couple of minutes, believe it or not, a short pause. From a neuroscience perspective, task switching has quite a load on our brains, especially because we've all got a million tasks these days. And so sometimes, and please trust me, I use this a lot, even a short pause after perhaps typing out and sending a really important and difficult email, or a short pause after a meeting, can make a big difference, because there is this thing in neuroscience that they call residual load from a previous task. So these short pauses ultimately are backed with knowledge, science, research. It's helpful if we explore what might make these small breaks that I'm talking about, these micro habits. It's helpful to explore what might help make them stick. And so briefly, I'm just going to introduce to us something interesting, and it's taken from the book Atomic Habits. The author is James Clear. By all means, if somebody could go on the internet and search for the book, find a link, stick it in the chat, that would benefit everybody. I'm just going to do a little bit on this because it helps us explore what might make these small habits, when we start to try them, what might make them stick. So the book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, of course. Now here we have this diagram. So this has been created, and this is based on the work of James Clear in the book Atomic Habits. And what I want you to think about and focus on is that we have these 4 quadrants here, and we've got these different words. So we've got the words in red, and so please just focus on those to begin with for my explanation. And I just want to say as well that for anybody who for whatever reason can't see that colour, if you have a vision impairment, then the words that we're looking for are closest to the centre. So it's cue, craving, response and reward. And so those are the words that we're focusing on initially. So according to James Clear, with these words here, he's really talking about at its core. So you could say this is the mechanics of a habit, which is perhaps, I would say, below conscious awareness. There's some sort of cue. That's the top left quadrant there in the diagram. So something triggers a behavior. Now, it could be an example that I thought of. It could be just the smell of coffee. The next one is craving. So there is a desire or a need. That need could be a sense of, or a desire for relief, or I want more focus. In the example, when it comes to the smell of coffee, I want to wake up. Then there's the response to that. So bottom right hand corner now, the response to that, and that's ultimately the action you take. Given the example, we walk into Starbucks, get a coffee, and of course the reward then is the benefit that we get from taking that action. So whatever benefit you get from coffee, I know that if I have a coffee in the morning, only one, if I have any more, I'll be climbing the walls, but certainly one can give me a sense of alert. It can help me feel awake, and you know, I'm kind of ready then. And so that's just very briefly the mechanics of a habit there. And then if we look at sort of the outside, so if we move upwards, we've got these different principles, you can say, when it comes to making it easier to build a habit. I just think this is fascinating. So there are these 4 principles here. Make it obvious. Make it obvious. So that could be you choose a time which is very clear to you. So when you finish a meeting, so you've just been in a meeting, and every time you do that, or if you choose to try something new, you finish a meeting and then you go for a short walk down the corridor, perhaps go to the water cooler or go and get a coffee or whatever it is. That's the idea of making it obvious, moving over to making it attractive. You know, what is going to make this thing attractive for us? You can even think about pairing going for a walk with something like listening to that iTunes album that you've downloaded but you've not got round to listening to yet. That kind of potentially would make it attractive if music is your thing. Making it easy, it's all about starting small. When it comes to creating these everyday actions that we can use, it almost like it creates like a compound effect when it comes to our own day-to-day wellness. I'm not just making this up, there's a lot of research behind this. So making it easy, it's about walking before you can run. And so let's say you fancied having a go at, I don't know, a short meditation or a breathing exercise. Keep it short and don't dive in and try and do a 20-minute. And then the last thing, make it satisfying. So that's all about awareness. It's all about being aware as we try these new things, being aware of how we feel after we've taken that small action. Hopefully you might feel a little bit clearer, a little bit more alert. It all depends on what you've chosen to try. So a little bit of a dive, a little bit of an excursion there into the world of habits, a little bit of what you might call the neuroscience view of this. And importantly, how might we go about trying these new micro habits, these short breaks? How might we make them stick? Another great thing from the book, which I use quite a lot, is something called habit stacking. It's a really simple formula in the grand scheme of formulas. After I, current habit, I will, new habit. And so look, in that book, there's a load more information on what this ultimately, the background, what sits under this formula. But for the case of this session today, I mean, an example for me that I've used many times, one thing that I do every day is, of course, I have a shower. And so after that shower, I've tried new things. Like a meditation, for example, just as an example. So as soon as I've had a shower, I've obviously dried off and all of that, and then I've gone straight into the new habit. And all of the research points to, if you do that consistently for a few weeks, it's more likely to stick. So have a little think about that. Habit stacking. Now let's just have a think about this. This is time when you all get an opportunity to share in the chat again. We've got this question here. What's one small thing you know helps your mental health, but you don't always do the thing? let's have some answers in the chat. And also at this point, if you've got any questions or anything that you'd feel like you wanted to share, then please do. I either answer questions in the moment if it makes sense, or we can answer questions later on. So we've got here, what's one small thing you know helps your mental health, but you don't always do it? Plenty of people in agreement that getting out in the fresh air, we know that that's good for us. We don't always do it. Reading a book, having less screen time, taking breaks, of course. Breaks is a classic. It's so easy in this information-based reality, certainly in an information-based role. I use that as a term to describe anybody who sits in the front of a computer a lot. Yes, in this day and age, it can be so easy to start skipping breaks, and ultimately it doesn't do us any favors. Early morning running, not having my phone in bed, absolutely. So good, what we call digital hygiene. Gosh, that's quite a phrase, isn't it? Let's keep it simple. Making sure the phone is out of the bedroom, I think that's a really good thing. It's certainly something that I do. Yeah, drinking water, that's a classic. That's one I have to remind myself of that. It's a small thing that if we skip it, I mean, it has all sorts of negative implications. I'll drink some water. Great answers in the chat. Thank you very much. So we all know the things that help. I also think these ideas of taking these short pauses can really help those of us who feel overwhelmed in life and we haven't really got that much time, or we've got all these responsibilities, and it's almost like perhaps we're waiting to the weekend until we can chill out. I think now more than ever we need to figure out ways that we can use to de-stress, decompress in our day-to-day, and I believe that's where these short micro habits come in. Great stuff. Now we're going to move on. We're going to look at this action mapping here, and this is where things get practical, interactive. So if you've got a pen and a piece of paper, or if you make notes on your phone, or however you make notes, it's about getting practical. And this is building on what we've just covered with atomic habits. We're going to take those principles that we were talking about, we're going to apply them directly to real work stress. So this is the core tool to take away for today. It's called action mapping. Super simple. Step one, we're going to identify a pressure point. Let's do this now. Identify a pressure point, something in your working day that consistently drains you. Think of this as an identifying moment or a situation that triggers stress. So thinking about what that trigger is, write that down. That's step one. Could be being interrupted. Could be the constant meetings, whatever it is, write it down. That's step one. Step two, it's about having awareness on what's the impact of that then? What's the impact of that? It could be the way somebody speaks to you at work in a negative way, and we identify that, step one, we define the impact. So what does this pressure point do to you? It could be a drop in energy. It could be that your focus just gets completely sucked out of the window. You might find that you get irritable, or you might find that you withdraw. Withdrawal for me that's been one of the ways that I've coped with stress. We all cope differently. Some people outwardly explode. Define the impact. And then we choose a micro action. We ask ourselves that question: what's the smallest action that I can take right now that might reduce the impact? So let's say you decided that the impact for me was the energy drops for me, like my energy, I get deflated. So I've defined that as an impact. What's one small thing that I can do to help with the impact of that? It might be just going for a short walk, taking yourself out of that equation, because there's definitely part of the nervous system which has been activated. And so by doing that, we regulate the nervous system. Simple action. Hopefully you're starting to think about how this applies to you in a practical sense, because that's what this session is all about. I want you to take away some things to do, some actions to take. And of course, this is a core tool of this session: action mapping. So have a little think about this. Those are the 3 steps. So choose a micro action. The action should always be, remember we're talking about micro actions here, the action should always be small, specific, repeatable, and realistic under pressure. Now, many of us don't do well under a situation where there is some conflict. I don't. And so when that arises, I've learned what I need to do in that moment is to remember to breathe, because on some level that fight flight response, it can trigger and we can end up freezing, and often that results in holding the breath. And so that can absolutely be applied to this, and that's something that I've learned through doing a similar process. So have a think about this as we move on to the next session. Should I say section, not session? Okay. So what I want to talk about now is, how does all of this knowledge apply to those around us? So we've looked into us as individuals. And so what about the encouragement and supporting others out there, our colleagues? And so that's what this next part is all about. So a little bit here, a little bit of info. So perceived manager and peer support is one of the strongest protective factors against workplace stress. So that's from the health and safety executive as well. So feeling able to talk about mental health at work is linked to higher engagement and lower presenteeism. Some of you may have heard of the phrase psychological safety. We are going to be starting to hear more about that in the months and years to come. That's ultimately what we're talking about. Feeling safe to speak about things without fear of retribution or being taken the mickey out of, whatever you want to call it. So just a little bit now about supporting others, our colleagues, those who we work shoulder to shoulder with. Very important. You've only just got to think about those statistics at the beginning of the session that sort of set the scene. The amount of people who are experiencing poor mental health, could be anxiety and or depression or other things. So it is important that we are looking out for ourselves, but of course for our colleagues as well. The first thing I want to say about supporting a colleague, and yes, this is workplace context, but it also applies outside of work. There can be this strong desire to want to fix people, and ultimately what's linked to that is this idea that you must know exactly the right words to say. So I just want to give you some reassurance. It's not about that. In the context of this session and the knowledge that we are exploring, it's about helping people just take that simple next step. So it's not about big advice. It's not even about giving advice. It's about encouraging small, specific actions that feel doable. A simple framework we can use for this is it's all about noticing, checking in with people, so doing what I call moving towards the conversation. If you feel as if somebody's not in a good place, by the way, Rather than giving a huge list of signs and symptoms, the number one, numero uno thing to look out for is changes in people. Now, we do see changes more if we know people, of course, but ultimately you could say that's like the umbrella thing to be looking out for. Changes in behavior, changes in attitude towards life, towards work. And so the framework is about noticing, looking up every once in a while, checking in with others. It's about being a good human being, ultimately, seeing how people are, and then moving into action. So you might notice something feels different, changes in mood. I've spoken about changes already. Someone might be more irritable, frustrated. So that's noticing. You just got to remember, we're not diagnosticians here, or counsellors or therapists, of course. We're just paying attention. And so the next thing is check in. It's all about keeping it simple, using your own language. How are you doing at the moment? You can even say you don't seem yourself. Fancy a chat? Use your own words, your own language. That's the essence of it. It's all about creating a human moment. That's what I would call it. You could also call it a moment of connection, and more importantly, a moment of safety. What's going on under the hood when you have these sort of conversations is hopefully the person who you're speaking with feels as if this person cares. It's okay to be honest. And then the action side of things, when it comes to supporting people, think about the question that we've been asking ourselves already. Asking that person, well, what's one small thing that might help you? One small thing that you can do. And that's the link back to these micro actions that we've been talking about. You can also gently offer some options. You can help someone prioritize things together if you so choose. That's if somebody's being overwhelmed, which is really common in this day and age, of course, with all these signals flying everywhere and all these things we've got to do. You can also think about, can things be adjusted? Anything in the short term? You can also offer to check in with somebody as well. And of course, there are different things that you can do if you are a leader, if you are a manager. Perhaps you could go into a deeper conversation when it comes to the work and small adjustments which can be made. Suffice to say, we're not here to fix. We're here to acknowledge, to listen, and to see if we can encourage people to take small actions which can help them. In other words, we're helping them build their own version of a micro habit. Now, I just want you to have a quick think about this. I just went through that slide there because I'd already spoken about that. There is this question here. What's one thing someone has done for you that actually helped when you were stressed? Let's have your answers for this. Absolutely fabulous to get your answers for this because, well, I think we'd all like to see them. Perhaps some inspiration will pour into the chat. What's one thing someone has done for you that actually helped when you were stressed? Let's get some answers in the chat. The power of listening has been acknowledged in the chat. We hear it a lot, not to be underestimated. Very powerful. Someone listened, helped to put priorities in order. So there's that example there. Great stuff. Listening is underestimated. We think we've got to have all the words, but we don't. It's way more about connection. All about connection. Someone showed empathy. Someone suggested going for a walk and some fresh air and talking through the problem. Absolutely. A problem shared is a problem halved. I always think there's great wisdom in these sayings that have lasted the ages of time. So moving on now to this final section, which is about for all of us. So, you know, the title, From Awareness to Action, Micro Habits that Protect Mental Health at Work, for you, individual perspective, for others, for those who we work shoulder to shoulder with, for all of us, a focus on our teams and wider organisation. Bit of info here. So strong social support is consistently linked to lower stress, better mental health and even longer life expectancy. Fascinating. In UK workplace data, supportive relationships at work are one of the strongest buffers against stress. And of course, we can all contribute to creating what we might call supportive relationships in work. Piera, you've got to leave early. It's been a real pleasure. I hope to see you again on a future one of these sessions. What a great picture. From an evolutionary perspective, all of this makes sense. So those comments there on the slide there, that research, the essence of strong social support consistently linked to lower stress levels. I mean, our nervous systems are absolutely still built in a way that we have to have this human connection. We can see on the slide, connection equals safety, which results in a reduced stress response. Isolation, that's a threat to us. That increases the stress response. So all of this makes sense from a evolutionary perspective. I had to slow down so I could say that word correctly. We're built for connection. I think it's easy to forget that in this day and age. I mean, the amount of time that I've spent in front of a computer over the years, and also as part of my journey with anxiety, depression, high levels of stress, one of the things that I tended to do a lot of, and at times still do, is isolate myself. It's really, really common. It's good knowledge to have, to be aware of, that the connection that we have with others in the context of community, in the context of the workplace, is absolutely vital. I mean, ultimately, it is why people leave jobs, unfortunately, if they have a poor manager. Just an example. It can be a huge stressor. So somewhere in there, in these supportive relationships that we create with people, there is this sense of safety, and that has an impact, a direct impact on our nervous system. So there are some actions that we could take on the level of the organization, on the level of our teams. They're not big initiatives. They're just small, repeatable changes that shape the environment over time. Let's have a think about these meetings that we have. Is there a way to create a shorter default? Only you know that if you're in that position of influence. 25, even 50 minutes to allow some buffer time. The amount of times that I hear people say from one meeting to the next, to the next, to the next, I don't think that's good for us. Moving over to boundaries. Working with expectations around outside working hours. I've got one of these in my signature. It talks about the flexibility of my working hours and that I don't expect people to answer emails if I send one at 8:30 at night, for example. So clearly communicated boundaries there. These boundaries and the way that we model them can give permission to others to work in these healthier ways. So having visibility around switching off and having behaviors that we use ourselves. Clear switching off behaviors. One of the things that I do just before I close my laptop every single day is I make a list. It could be a shorter list of the 3 things that I want to jump on the next day. And then the laptop gets closed. Somehow that helps me create a bookend. And then I can go off and do whatever I want to do for the evening. Communication as well. Someone mentioned this in the chat. So if we can create clarity around expectations and our role, let's just have a think about that. Let's say if you're a leader on this session, having to think about that from a leadership perspective, and just knowing that if somebody in their role doesn't have that clarity, it can be a huge stressor for them. So getting underneath that, clearing that up, can make a big difference. Anything that we can do to reduce this always on pressure can actually increase engagement, make work more effective. The final thing there is connection. I've spoken a lot about connection, so checking in, having regular check-ins. Are there ways to have a well-being focus when it comes to the meetings that we have? And is there a way to make space for informal conversation anywhere? Comment in the chat. The point about meetings is a really good one. I will adopt that approach. I very often surf between meetings on a busy day. Absolutely. Great stuff. These small changes that I've just presented here on the slide reduce cognitive load. I think we all need a reduction in that. Friction. Perhaps that means friction between those others around us. And preventable stress. Some workplace stress is preventable. And importantly, they also increase a sense of control, this sense of agency that we have in our day-to-day. I mean, there's no perfection here. Many of us have this experience where we just feel completely whisked off our feet because of the day. But we can claw some of that sense of control back. All of this strengthens what we call psychological safety. Now, we've got 6 minutes left or so, and I want to bring somebody else on just to give a little bit of an outro. I want you to think about the practicalities of this session, and I'm going to round off by saying it's really important that you take something from this session and apply it practically ASAP. And so I want you to choose something from each of the sections that we've covered today. Remember, section 2 here, that was about looking at a pressure point, identifying a pressure point and the impact that that has on you, and then choosing one small thing that you can do, a new habit that you want to try and create. Do this now for one of the sections that have been covered off. So it could be that for section 2 there, one pressure point, the impact it has on you, and one small thing that you can do. Or you might choose to do section 3, which is identifying a person or a situation, figuring out one small check-in or a supportive action that you will take. So that's about supporting others. And then finally, there is the focus from a team level, which we've just done. That's one small team or environmental change you could suggest or model. Now you can do more than one if you like. You can choose an individual perspective. You can just do that. Or you can choose the perspective of supporting somebody else. Or you can choose the perspective of a small thing that you could suggest or action you can take from a team perspective. We can do more than one. That is what I would like you to do. Hopefully you've been making some notes. My hope is that you take some of the things that we've covered on this session today. The important thing is that you commit to taking some form of action. Please type in the chat what small action you're going to take. Because the thing is, when you type it in, it's like you're creating it. It's like you're going public with it. You're broadcasting, right? I'm going to do this. And so as a human being, psychologically, that makes it more likely you're going to follow through. So let's have some answers in the chat. Commitment to action. What one small action you are going to take after this session? Look after your own mental health and well-being in the workplace. Try and create a new habit. One of you might even go and buy that book. I'm not an affiliate, by the way. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Very, very interesting book for anyone who wants to create new habits in your life. End the day with tomorrow's top priorities. Provide focus to start the next day. Absolutely. So there's some really good ones coming in now. Taking a short breather between tasks, even if it's just a minute on the clock, breathing in and out through the nose between tasks. I use that all the time because I get overloaded all the time. Habit stacking. Someone's going to look at that. Building buffers in between meetings. Someone said they're going to support a colleague when somebody feels stressed. Going to go for a walk with them. Absolutely. All of this makes a difference. Sticking to it. Habit stacking. It's about consistency. It's also about being kind to yourself as well and try not to beat yourself up. It's not about perfection. Consistency. If you miss one day, as an example, that's not your cue to give up totally. Small, consistent actions. I almost see it like compound interest. It's like we're paying into a wellness account, and the interest rate is good as long as we keep paying in. And so look, that's the end of this session. I hope you found it to be useful. I can see there's been consistently around 21 to 24 people on this session. I know one of us had to leave early, and so that's it from me. We've got a minute left, and I'm going to hand back over to, I think, Jack. And so it's been great to be here. Thank you so much.
A big thank you to Steve on behalf of the Next Gen committee. It was a really insightful and practical session there, I think, with plenty for us all to take away. And I just wanted to give a shout out as well, just to the Mental Health in Business company generally. It's the second sort of session we've done with you. You're always great partners, and I think it's such an important topic for everyone, particularly as we head into Mental Health Awareness Week as well. Yeah. Last thank you from me is just to our members, not only for joining and obviously giving up your lunch hour, but also participating in such strong numbers today. It's really good to see so much engagement, particularly on topics like this. I think it's very important to everyone, and hopefully there's been lots there for us to take away. As I say, yeah, just to echo what Steve said, really, I'd encourage you all to take one of those micro habits and put it into practice over the coming week. I know it's a busy week in the insurance industry next week with BIBA phase as well. So hopefully there's a few things there that we can start putting into action next week, and hopefully they survive for the long haul. But yes, just to round off, thanks again for your time. Thanks again to Steve. Thanks again to MHIB. And look forward to seeing as many of you at a future MGA Next Gen event in the future.
Thank you.